Hey guys, how's everyone doing today? I think my eyes are tricking me. I can't believe I have to put my glasses on. Okay, no. I'm nearsighted, so I can see close up, but not far away. But for a second, I was like, I can't even see close in front of my face, so I don't know what's going on. If you guys can stop the aging process, I would appreciate any notes, or any tips or tricks, please. Oh, right. We're going to get started today on participation questions, and then we're going to go into the last part of the Cinema 4D principles of motion design. So let me just get these all downloaded for you guys. Participation questions. So far I only have I think one person who's already put in all of the, who's already submitted this project. So I'm curious to see how it goes. Oh, come on. Let's download the submissions. All right. While that's happening, I will pull up the principles of motion design. Technically, when you download it, it'll say bounce, but it's really weight. And we'll fix that here in a second. But let me pull that up for you guys. Everything's happening off screen on this screen. Is it this one when I'm pointing this way? All right. Let me bring that over. Make that bigger. You guys can check out, kind of get a preview of what we're going to do today. We will be working on recreating this. I'm not quite sure what this is. Over in this tiny little corner there. What is that? Oh gosh, that's the anchor point for the floor. That's kind of crazy. The studio floor. Ooh. Let's get out of this view. Go back to this view. And yeah, so if I play this back, there you go. We're going to recreate this today. We'll try and get to the pepper part mostly. Like the pepper, if you guys do the 3 balls and the pepper, I'll give you extra credit. You guys can choose to do the squashing, like this kind of cartoony looking ball, as either or, right? You can do it as like a ball or as the pepper. But if you have 4 total, right? If you have the light ball, the heavy ball, which you'll do on your own, and then both the like cartoony ball and the cartoony pepper, I'll give you guys some extra credit there. So we will be working on this today, but let us go ahead and jump to those questions. They should be done downloading now. Download, submissions, extract them. All right, thankfully they are here. Whew, we got a lot. Let's get through them. All right, Eric, we have you first. Okay, this looks like, oh, that's so cool. This is wrong. These are not the questions. It like put them into one folder. Crap. Let me see here. If I can just separate it by date. Okay, I think I can. Okay, let's do this. Okay, yeah, because these are the principles of motion design. Okay, so let me take these. cut them out, put them in another folder. Folder. Just leave it named new folder because I will delete it later. And there should be 15 items. There should be 15 total submitted questions, and we are good. All right, there. My own troubleshooting. So, let me just do that. Do that. Sorry if you're hearing my infinite scroll. There we go. Okay. All right, Eric's question. Your son is sleeping, so he's quiet today. My question is about adding assets to C4D. What are good sites to take assets from, and do you add them to a project? First of all, thanks for smiling and waving at the camera. Let me go back here. So you can go on, I believe there's one like Turbo Squid. Let me see if I can bring up a website here. Let's see. I know that Adobe offers website. I don't think you guys get the assets for Adobe unless you pay for them, but let me just check here right quick. What I would really do is like, I would type in 3D models download free. That'll be a good one to look for. There is Sketch. See, not all of them though will be rigged, and not all of them will have like the PBR physical based rendering models. Remember, PBR is physical based rendering. Not all of them will have like textures to them or be rigged, or so some of them you would have to like specifically look for. I have never been to this website before. I've been to this one's Sketchfab. I've been to Turbo Squid before. I believe they have some free 3D assets you can pull from. And then as far as like downloading, like, right, you just download and then open them up inside of Cinema 4D. OBJ models are what you would look like. Those are Cinema 4D models, Cinema 4D based. Let me see here. What was I doing down here? Oh shoot, what is it called? There we go. Let's turn that on. So like, you can look there, and then just importing them, you just like essentially double click and open it up. Or if you're inside of Cinema 4D, you can go to File, Open Project, Open Recent, and open them that way. I think, let's see if we can save project as, and this way you guys can see the different file 3D formats. Let's see this. It saves as a C4.C4D file, but then let me look here real quick. 3D model extensions. Right, again, the extensions are what comes after a file name, right? So we can see all of them. FBX is probably one of a more like known one. Same with OBJ. Cardara, I've never worked in that program or with that company before, so I'm not quite sure. But this is a great this right here is a great source that explains what file formats are and stuff. So I would just check on here. And then it explains what each one of them are. Let me copy this. And I'm going to paste that into... Hey, Sarah, see you in the chat. I'm going to save that. And then what I'll do, Eric, is I'll put that in like an announcement or in Slack for you guys so that you can go there and check it out and visit it. And then same with like Turbo Squid. I'll do the same here. I'll just move that over so it saves it right here for us. But good question. And thank you for making me not think that my audio was all messed up. And all right, Brian.
All right, hey, two quick things about the revisions here. So the first one for the typography assignment, you said just make the contact information in your own style. So does that just mean change the font? Because I can do that real quick. And the second thing, I took notes of the suggestions you left for the real and surreal. A couple of them I did try originally, and I couldn't figure it out. Like the cameras and the anchor points, I tried that, but it didn't really work. So, but I'll try with the other stuff. No,
I think we ended up figuring out, Brian, that it like only when as far as like transforming objects there and it keyframing, right? Like allowing you to add a keyframe, that you have to manually change the value inside of the coordinate panel that or inside the coordinates, which is inside the attributes panel. So like if I were to select this, you have to change these coordinates. It's not going to let you change by this way with at least with the scaling. Like with the position, I think the position it'll allow you to do that because it allowed me to do it with this. But as far as like scaling goes, and I'm not quite sure why it won't allow you to do that. I can look into that a little bit more though. And we can try and figure that out. And then as far as like in your own style, that means to plan out a different way that your information is going to animate on screen, right? From right now, this section comes from the bottom up, and your name comes from the top down. And what I want you to do is think of something more creative, right? Because that's kind of vanilla in the motion world. It was just kind of to get you guys to have an understanding of not to overlap your type and all that kind of stuff. But if you can find a different way to animate this on here, right? Because you guys kind of learned a little bit more about masking in this one. You know, try it out. Try and get creative and think within what you've learned so far in class. And try and apply that kind of stuff to here, right? I had someone at one point separate the E out of their name, and they did a slow rotation on their E. On all of their videos, it was kind of his signature little animation that he liked to put in his name, which was, I thought it was cool. But, you know, more than that, right? I want something to look interesting here. Now that you know a little bit more, this is a good time to come back here and to reassess that and plan something out, right? It's all about planning. You want to start with an idea. And in fact, this is kind of how the pipeline goes when it comes to animation, right? You have this idea, this concept that you think up about a video. That let's say you have a client that comes to you and is like, I'm in need of a video that advertises and I need to get word out about my business or a new product that they're launching, right? And so they're going to give you parameters on maybe what they kind of want the idea of the video to be like. Like, let's say I have this medical device that I want to showcase, and like for doctors, my device is geared towards doctors. I want them to learn to, I want them to reach out to me to, want to learn more about this. And so at that point you have like this idea, this concept of what this video is going to kind of be, right? And then you have to storyboard. You have a script writing, right? If there's going to be a voiceover, then you do storyboarding, which is planning out like essentially how each scene is going to kind of be in the motion that's going to happen, right? Because if you pre-plan the motion, then when you go to animate it, it's going to be a lot smoother of a process. And even actually before that, not every company does this, but it is always really good practice to work on a design brief. Essentially what that does is it gives the client an idea of like where your vision is going for their idea, right? So they come to you with that idea, hey, I've got this product I want all these people to know about. And I want it to be like a 2-minute video. Let's go ahead and make that. You come to them with your design brief being like, let's, gear it towards this. Let's have it kind of look like this style. And then you pull ideas from the internet or wherever you're getting that idea from the style from, whether you're illustrating it or have like another illustration style you want to kind of mimic, right? And then once you guys have approval on all of that, then you go into storyboarding phase. And from that storyboarding phase, like I said, that's where you plan all your motion out. And so that's kind of what you're going to want to do here, right? You've got the idea. You'll come up with your own idea of what you want the design to look like, keeping in mind principles of design, right? And all the things you've learned about designing so far, color theory, hierarchy, those kind of things. And then create yourself a little storyboard if it helps you like map it out, right? And create that blueprint and then you execute it. So I want it to look interesting. I've had Eric had an interesting one. Eric, if you could post that in Slack at some point, that would be awesome because he has it where it like zooms into his name. Cool stuff there. But yeah, maybe do some looking on like Pinterest or online or something. Instagram has a lot of good motion designers that you can get ideas from as well. All right, here's Zoe.
Hello. My question for this week is going to be how to navigate Cinema 4D. I always feel like I can, do this basic motion, but I can't really tilt the camera. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I feel like every time I open up this program, I have to relearn how to do everything. So
shortcuts are going to be your friend, Zoe. So I have inside of our Miro board from class, let me go here to the home page, a list of shortcuts for you guys for Cinema 4D and After Effects. Of course, it's going to make me sign in. Stupid. Hold on. Oh no, that's not gonna work. Okay. You guys, if you can visibly see my frustration on my face, that's like trying to sign in because I have 10 million different passwords. Okay, perfect. So, in here, I have shortcuts. Here is a video of shortcuts that you guys can watch, which talks about essential keyboard shortcuts inside of After Effects. I highly recommend you watch that because it will help you to work a lot quicker, right? And the faster we can work, the more efficient we are. The more efficient we are, the more we get paid because we can do more projects, right? So watch that, learn these, and they will make your life a lot easier. In fact, you can download like a file to have on hand. So if you're just wanting to like click through that file so you don't have to watch a video over and over again, you can just navigate through that file. So I definitely recommend going through that. And then I also have some shortcuts here for Cinema 4D, including the viewport. And that's the one that you want. Moving around, zooming or dollying in on the scene, and orbiting your scene. If you're inside of, let me go inside because I have it open here. I'm inside of Cinema 4D right now, and I'm just going to hold down the 1, like literally the number 1 on my keyboard, and I move my mouse around. holding down 1, clicking, moving my mouse around allows me to like move through the viewport area. If I hold down 2, click and move my mouse around, I can dolly into a scene, right? Because it's called dollying. You'll hear zooming. Most people will say zooming in, but it's the technical term is to dolly in and out. And then if you hold down 3 and click and drag, you rotate in the scene. And so those are quick shortcuts that you can use to move yourself around instead of holding these, right? Because this is a little bit harder to do when you click up here in this area and click on these. Although you can, right? Because that's to move, that's to dolly, and that's to rotate. It's just easier if you usually have 2 hands on the keyboard, 2 hands, like one on the keyboard, one on the mouse, and you just click and drag this way, right? It makes it a little bit easier. So that is to answer that question. All right. Lee.
Hi, Ms. Makara. So looking at this class update information you gave, reading this this thing about the revision round, like honestly, this is kind of the first time I'm hearing this, so I'm curious, what exactly is that? Is that a certain assignment that we have to do, or just wondering?
Yeah, I've been mentioning it the past few classes. And what it is, right, is because I give you feedback on your projects that you've done so far. The revision round project, right, or assignment, we'll call it that. Project or assignment, you can call it whatever you want. But the revision round is where you take all of that feedback that I give you on those prior projects that we've done and you implement that feedback into that. Basically, you make the changes that I tell you to make, and then you re-render it out and you'll submit them again. And that is what that revision round is. Now, in real life, I'm putting a hard deadline on this, right? Because in real life, you get hard deadlines and you don't get the flexibility that I give you guys with your projects here, where I'm like, oh, you know, you have a deadline, but if you don't get it in right away, that's okay. Well, the reason, you know, for this hard deadline, 2 things. In the real world, these deadlines are serious. If you don't make a deadline multiple times, like maybe once, I'm sure, like your client's not going to be so upset. But if you are consistently missing deadlines, you're going to lose jobs. You'll get fired from a job. You'll lose clients, you know. Being timely and sticking to your word and sticking to a timeline is really important. And so that's one reason why I'm making a hard deadline for this revision round. The second reason, right, in that why I mentioned that you guys have to have your projects turned in by that time. In fact, let me pull up the announcement so I can have it on screen here for you guys. The reason that I say I want things turned in, all of your older projects submitted by 3/3, is because in order to have feedback on those projects, or in order to complete a revision, you have to have the feedback on the project, right? And so I want them all done by the 3rd of March. Any kind of projects that you guys are behind on or missing, get those in by the 3rd of March so that I have time to give you feedback, so that when we start this revision round, you guys will have something to change, right? If you're just turning in projects for the first time during the revision round, that's a no-go, right? I don't like, there's nothing to revise at that point. I haven't given you anything to revise at that point, right? I'm sure there will be revisions on that, but this is kind of how it works in our field, right? You submit a rough copy, which would be the first project that you turn in, and then you get feedback, and then you take that feedback, you implement it, and then you turn it in for a first revision round. Usually clients, like in my work, clients have a total of 3 revision rounds. So that includes turning in the first version, which is the rough, and then they give us feedback on it and tell us what kind of changes they want. And then that's our revision 1, right? And once we turn that in, they look at that, they give us more feedback. That's the second revision. And then it's after that last set of feedback, then we have a final that we turn into the client, right? Because most of the time your work's not, I would even say, I mean, you have to have a good 10 years under your belt to have work that you turn in once and they're like, I have no revisions. In fact, if it's not personal work, then you're going to have revisions on it. I guarantee it. No matter who you are, no matter how long you've been doing it. If you're doing your own personal work, then it's up to you to do your own revisions on that, right? But like, if you give it to a client, they're going to be like, hey, I want this text changed. Hey, I want this to be smaller. You know, I don't like this. What's happening here? They're going to pick your work apart and they're going to tell you what they want done to it. And then you have to take that and you have to make those changes, right? And so that's why any current projects that are missing or haven't been submitted, get those turned in by the 3rd of March. That gives me some time to go over those submitted projects and to give you guys feedback, and at which some point either before or after spring break, we will have that revision round, right? Which will be an assignment where I'm like, okay, you guys are tasked with completing the changes that I've given you. And then you'll turn in those revisions. And I'll let you guys know how I want that to be turned in later. Because we don't have this posted. This project isn't posted yet, but it will be coming up very shortly. And that's why I want all those missing projects turned in. So I hope that answers your question. Good question though, right? Because, you know, something I've been mentioning it, but no one's asked what a revision round is specifically. So here's Kaylee's question.
This week is about you with the animation industry. Basically, once you graduated school, was it easy to find a job in the animation industry? Was it faster or slower than you expected?
It kind of depends, right? Good question, Kaylee. I actually started freelancing right away out of college because I didn't want to have to wait. and I've just been working for a really long time, and I like to think that I'm fairly good at communicating. So me reaching out to prospective clients was not an issue for me, right? And I already had some people who could, help me, like I was kind of technically freelancing inside of when I was still at school. I was working for other students who were doing other types of projects, right? I had a peer who was in the filming program doing like a short film, and he needed some animation work done, and so we worked up like a verbal contract and sat together and talked about what he needed, and I did some work for him and I got paid. I did some YouTube bumpers for some other students, right? I started just kind of working while I was in school, because I went to school at a later age, so I wasn't afforded time on that, right? And I wanted to hustle. I wanted to get that job right away. So really, it's all about how hard you're looking and how much you want it. And so you just got to keep going, and sometimes you'll feel like you're submitting applications every day, right? It gets exhausting. I hate more than anything filling out resumes and applications. It's so annoying. And so that's why I really recommend making sure that your work inside these classes is strong, right? Because that's the work that you're going to put forward to your prospective employer, right? When you go to want to get a job after school, you're going to have a reel. And if that reel's not good, you're not going to get hired. And so that's one of the reasons we have the revision rounds, right? So I tell you guys, hey, let's make this project a little bit better. Let's modify it or add to it or deduct from it, right? Because sometimes we do too much. And that's what you'll be putting in a reel, and that's what you'll be sending to an employer, because in this field, really, in fact, I don't even think I've really looked over anyone's resume as much as I've just looked at their portfolio. And then look at their resume second. So, hey, little guy. Hello, you're joining the live stream today. And so, definitely want to And let me touch base on kind of what I said a second ago about it's how hard you want to work for it. That's a factor, right? There are going to be some times where you are trying and you are a good animator, right? And you just aren't getting the jobs. And it could be for a lot of reasons. You could be priced out by some people, especially if you're in the freelance world, unless you're quick and you have a good reputation and you've, got a good rapport with other animators who recommend you to people. Sometimes you'll get priced out for a job. You'll have someone who does decent work and unfortunately they charge less, right? Like that happens a lot too. So you have to learn to take the good with the bad and the bad up front right away. Hold on one second. Excuse me, I could feel it coming. And sometimes you'll work really hard for it and you won't get it. And it's just kind of a part of the growing process in your career, and just learning that, okay, I didn't get this job, it's time to go for the next one, and just keeping yourself that momentum going, right? You might not get it right away, but you still got to move forward and keep trudging through it. And also, animation studios tend to not hire as much around, I think, the first part of the year. And depending right now, right, we're heading into like kind of a recession. And so people are starting to lay off a lot of motion designers in the field. And I'm not saying that to scare you, but it is a reality, right? And so we have to be resilient. That's the biggest thing when it comes to this field, is just learning to go with the flow. And with that being said, there are a ton of animation studios out there, and there are a ton of clients that need work, right? Because you might be working for a marketing company, right? I'm working for a marketing agency right now that specializes in video and animation. So technically, we're like a studio. We also do other things, but there's tons of places you can look. So it's really just about casting kind of a wide net in the area that you want to focus on, right? If you're wanting to go to 3D, cast a wide net within that area, and look for studios that specialize in 3D or what you're looking for, and then just start applying. And the nice thing is that remote work's very possible with this job. So you can be applying for some place to work in New York or, you know, the Midwest somewhere. I think the Midwest actually, like, I think Minnesota has quite a bit of animation studios, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, good question though. It's something you guys all think about. It's a good thing to start thinking about, even that, because 2 years goes quick. So start doing some side work and hustle if you can. Do work for friends if you want to. And then once you get good at stuff, then don't do things for free. Don't ever do your work for free. That's another tip I have for you. You will have people that will come to you and ask you for work. And I do not personally do free work, even if it's a friend. I say, we'll work together, I'll cut you a deal, but like, this is my career, this is my job, this is what I do for a living. So if you want it done and you want it done right, you're going to pay for it, right? And either they like it or they don't, but they're still my friend, right? So, and we have Lee.
So this week I kind of was looking through more YouTube videos like I said I was gonna do. I also started doing the character designs that I planned out. The thing is, I'm kind of questioning for like the environmental like design. If I wonder if I should make it like fantasy, because I do, cause like for like jobs I want to get, I'd prefer to work at a video game. That's more like illustrated towards fantasy and stuff like that. So I wonder if I should make like a mythical land or like a creepy swamp or something like that. But I don't know, like the possibilities, or unless I just need to pick one and which one, would be a best fit for a potential, job that I'd want soon at least. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a problem for a lot of us, is really like kind of knowing what we like to do, because a lot of us have multiple fields or parts that we enjoy, and then really it's just sticking to those plans. I think it kind of gets hard. You have like 10 million ideas in your head, and then just really honing in on one and executing it is a lot harder than you would think. It's a lot harder to stay self-motivated, right, than it is to have someone who's like, here's some money, do this job for me. That's a lot easier because you're motivated by the money and by the job than being like, I want to make this for me. And the more busy you get, the harder it is to have that self-motivation. And so I really recommend, if you're going to do like personal work on the side, is to set a timeline and a deadline for yourself, right? And be like, I'm going to get this done by this time. And you know, it can be a little bit of a longer deadline than you're normally used to. It can take you a little longer, but the more things that you work on in your personal time, you're just going to grow and more. And then that kind of stuff is the stuff that you add to your portfolio, right? Those are the things that you want to work on. The personal work should give you enjoyment. If it's not giving you enjoyment, then what's the point, right? So, yeah, it can be a lot. All right, Nolan.
So my question for this week is, what all can you do with the blur? Whatever, I don't know what it's called, but the thing that makes it like blurry, like, is there anything you can do to make it, to change it, or to make it look any better? Is there any settings, or is it just when it detects motion, it blurs it? So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, Nolan. So there's different ways to add blur to objects inside of After Effects. So that one right there is just a quick toggle, and that one is just detecting the motion and just adding like a generic blur to it. There's also an effect that you can look up inside of the effects panel, and you can just type in blur, and there's different kinds of blurs. There's like a radial blur, which kind of blurs things in like a radial pattern, right? Like a circle. And then there's the Gaussian blur. That's the one that's the probably. I'm sorry, you guys. That one's the one that's like the most popular, I would think, or I do know. The Gaussian blur is the most popular. And so when you're putting effects onto your layers inside of After Effects, you have more control over it, because like up here, right, it adds it to your effects controls panel, and there is where you can increase the blur to make it more blurry, or decrease it to make it less blurry. So you have a lot more control when it comes to an effect. But just that one with the toggle, there's just a quick way to add the blur. And it's not that big of a, because of that project is not that big of a project. You don't have to add any kind of crazy blur to it. And really, you're only using the other blurs in very specific like scenarios. The Gaussian blur you will use very often. I will say you'll probably use that the most, rather than just toggling on the blur, which you can do. But the problem with that kind of blur is it's very heavy on your computer. Like it will use up a lot of, like, it just takes a long time to process things with blur, especially with the heavy blur in it. And it's just a pain, right? Like if you go from just toggling that on and your video only takes like maybe a minute or two to render out, and then you add the other blur and you see all of a sudden it takes 10 minutes, right? It's quite a drastic change depending on how much blur you add, but you can mess around with that and try it out and see what it's like. And then if it's just not rendering quick enough, then go ahead and just either drop the blur amount down or just dump it all together and just use that quick blur right there, right? And yeah, just make sure you're adding it only to the layers that have movement, and not to, you can add it to other layers to create like an effect, right? Like let's say you want your background blurred because you want people to really focus in on what's happening in the foreground of your video. And so you can throw a blur on your background layer and then just slightly blur that out a little bit. So it just kind of makes it a little bit softer. That's an effect I use often while I'm animating as well. But good question. All right, we have a Maya.
Oh, it's progress for this week. I'm currently feeling a bit under the weather, but I finally got a schedule made to redo these assignments, and I hope everything makes sense in the email that I sent. So once you take a look at that, I hope you are able to understand the schedule I proposed. But other than that, I'm ready to get this work completed and do the best I can, but do it correctly this time. I recently been in contact with a counselor, so I'm having my first meeting.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that, Amaya. Good job. Yeah, like if you guys are having trouble keeping up on some of the projects, that's okay. I suggest just if you guys are really behind, it's just going to get harder and harder to continue like keeping up with the stuff. And so if you give me like you're behind, quite a bit, write me a deadline. Say, "Hey, I plan to get all this stuff done." And if you guys are in need of like extra services, right? Because there's some that are counseling services at GCC offer help, like getting assistance. Like if you have, for instance, like I mentioned, I live with ADHD, right? So sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get focused on things. I have worked out my own system throughout the years of just doing things that I can make deadlines without having issues, but that's not the case for everyone, right? And so they have assistance where you can find a way with the doctor's, with doctor's recommendations and stuff where you can maybe have a little bit of a buffer period on deadlines and stuff, or like maybe you need a little bit longer to work on a test if you're in a class that takes a test. And so I really suggest utilizing those kind of things, because there's nothing wrong with that. And then and if you guys are having an issue keeping up in the class, like I said, write me and I'll work with you on it. I don't want you guys to fail by any means. I want you guys to do good, and I want to see you guys in the field one day. I don't. I'm not teaching for no reason here. So, but good job, Amaya. Janelle.
So I haven't gotten too far on the project yet for this week, so I don't have any super specific questions. But I do have one small one. So when you zoom out on this, and when I'm working with it and animating it, the dice, it's hard to see. It's just really dark, so I didn't know if there was a different way to like display it, or if there was just a different setting I could do so that when I'm animating it, it's easier to kind of look at it and animate it. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the reason I understand that, like getting used to looking at wireframing of like an object and seeing all that geometry can kind of be overwhelming to your eyes. But the reason that it's not textured, right? Not necessarily, this isn't that bad, but like the thing is with that one, with the die or the dice, it is a transparent texture on there. And so because of that, if you're trying to do like a live playback, it's gonna, unless your system is really powerful, it's definitely going to chug along and it's going to have a hard time showing you exactly what you're wanting to see, right? Like this one, if I hit play on here, it might work for me. There we go. And all I did was hit, I think, NA. N as in Nancy. NA. And then it turns on different views. So you can, with the die, I think this is, I have textures already on this, right? I think because I did hit the NA, let's see. When you hit N, on the end, don't move your mouse, just hit N. If I were to go to H, it's going to show all the wireframes. Oh, did I hit NH? Let me see here. Do I have to just select something specific? I am checking for all of us. Hidden lines, wireframing. Gosh dang it. I keep moving my mouse. Hands off my mouse. Hidden lines. Let's try G. There we go. Like this, right? It's really, it seems like a lot harder to see and understand. You're seeing all of the geometry actually taking place here, which becomes very important at a certain point when you are when you're animating inside of Cinema 4D, and you really need to see that animation happening smoothly, but it's not happening because of all the textures or materials and stuff that you have on your on your objects, right? So just hit NA and that will put you to this garage shading, and B will give you the lines of it, right? So you can still see the materials that you have on it, but also you can see the lines. And that might be a little bit easier for you guys too. But NA, that takes all those lines away so you can just kind of see it for what it is. But remember to always, the biggest thing, right, is to hit Control R to get that render preview so you can see what it actually looks like, right? Because it's definitely dulling it. It's like not making those materials look realistic at that moment, right? Because if you look here, this material has like a noise to it happening, right? There's noise happening in the shadows, which is normal, and like you don't get that when it is like this. You don't see all that noise happening up in these areas. It just looks really smooth and stuff. But yeah, those views can be kind of something you have to get used to. I don't think you can change it up here. You can change it up here. Here, up in display, you can also change the way things look in your display tab up here towards the top. So, but let's go on to the next question here. We have Jessica.
So I read the article on Cinema 4D Graph Editor, and when it mentioned the animate layout at the top right of the program, I was confused to see where it was because I couldn't see it. And then I realized I could press this switch and it would show out the other layouts. And that would be the animate right there with the dope sheet and the curve. I was wondering what are the differences between these two different layouts?
So the layouts change basically to save you space for while you're working, because some things you work in more like, let me show you, like the animate one, you want to see all those, you get to see all those keyframes within this view a little bit more. And so it just takes all these panels and it just rearranges them so that you have an easier view of what you're doing at the time. Like if I'm rigging, I'm going to change that and it's going to give me the view of my specific whatever I'm doing there, right? But then it's going to have all these other things where my layers and like all this other stuff is happening, right? Over in this side. So it just kind of depends. I forget which one I was in. Standard, I think I was in your modeling. If you're doing modeling differently, notice how it gives you all of your modeling tools down here, right? With your loop selection, your brushes, all that kind of stuff. So it's really just taking specific panels and giving you access to them in different ways, depending on what specifically you are doing at that moment. And inside of After Effects, in fact, you can do the same thing. Let me see if I can open After Effects real quick. And it's going to open over here. But in After Effects and in Cinema 4D too, you can create your own custom ones. So let's say, oh, perfect example. I was not meaning to do this. Let me delete all these guys and then save it. Yes, delete them. I'm not using them. Save. Okay, perfect. I had my stuff all changed around in a previous one, but if you go up here into Window, up at the top right there, and then you drop that down and you go up to Workspace, and then it'll have another menu where it's all dropped down, and there's different ones here too. So if we look, you have one for animation, one to do stuff with color, one where your effects are more present. Like if I put that there, your effects are all set up right here. Let me see. There, some of them are subtle differences, not that big of a deal. I have a custom one that I have up here where I have specific plugins I work with, right? Some here, some here. I have, and you can, like, if you make your own, you just save as a new workspace, and then you'll title it, and then you can always save changes to it too. Like if you're, like, let's say I didn't like this here for some reason, I wanted to close it, and then I'd save changes to that workspace. And in general, I work in the default for you guys, but like I can start changing that around if you want, so that you can get used to seeing how those things differ, right? I wouldn't mind doing that if you guys need. So, good question there, though, Jessica. And way to recognize that up at the top, because not a lot of people do. I usually don't switch in between all the time. Sometimes I will, but in general, I usually just get comfortable in one layout and then I search for things, which is and it's not as convenient of a workflow that way. But all right, Yvette's question.
Hello, this is Yvette. I'll be doing my participation grade this week for the Principles of Motion Design for Cinema 4D. I feel this would make sense since we did the 2D. And so far, I only did just a little bit of it last week when I had time, but right now I'm where I should be, I think. It's not fully finished yet, but I feel pretty proud. I do need to add more stretch in the beginning, but
Also, don't forget, Yvette, while you're doing that, good start to it. And you want to make sure that over 96 frames, which is 4 seconds long, right? Because it's a little slow here. But over 96 frames, we have to have 3 bounces, 3 total bounces of that dice. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
with that being said, so far what I've been struggling with is, as I said before, is when it comes down, it's just a stretch that I've been struggling with, and keeping track of my keyframes and stuff, which it's different in Cinema 4D instead of After Effects, so it's a bit of a challenge. Another thing is also how this works and how you move in Cinema 4D is different from After Effects. So it's a little hard when I want to get in a certain position and want to see everything, but can't unless if I mess with the moving around for a while, which is a little frustrating. But one thing I'm enjoying right now is just how it's 3D, which I wanted to do is I want to do 3D animation, so I'll be doing this kind of stuff, and therefore I have to learn this. But it's very fascinating to watch a still object look and feel real, like it's watching some kind of some video that's like with animation and stuff. But yeah, I can't say much right now, but I'm sure in the next participation I'll explain more on what else I'm struggling with or what I enjoyed more about this. But so far I only got this cube. I feel proud, so I'm really excited to get this finished. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, good job with that, Yvette. It looks like you're off to a good start. On that second bounce on the way down, you'll need to add the stretch onto there. That's just kind of what I was seeing there. And then it just takes a little bit longer. So what you'll do is you will finish up that section and you'll shorten it up, and then you can duplicate everything, right? It is very cluttered looking inside of the animation panel within Cinema 4D versus After Effects. I wish there were a way that they would possibly change the colors of those keyframes so you could see them differently, like your scaling keyframes would be a different color than your position keyframe changes. Because when it is in Cinema 4D, they stack onto each other and it can get really confusing. But the one thing that I will suggest that you do is that when you are in am I in the standard or in the modeling? Nope, nope. Which one was I? I was just in was I in the Animate? I was not, but here. So you look at here, right, in the toon one that I have just pulled up. And these are the specific positional keyframes, right? So there is that, but then like there's also there's just there's a lot that seem like they stack on top of each other. And so when you're looking specifically for a certain parameter that you want to highlight and change, I suggest dropping down into these little menus and selecting that specific layer. And that way you can move things around as needed. And it just gets used, it just takes time, especially with the navigating of it as well. It takes some time to get used to, so. All right, let's go. We're almost through them today, you guys. We just have a few more. Here's Juliana's question.
Okay. So I was wondering if there's a way, because in Illustrator I know you can like shift click and it'll stay like within the same plane or whatever. So I was wondering if there's a way that I could like have these leveled, like a quick way. Because I tried doing that when we were doing the surrealism and realism assignment, and I just kind of threw this on because I was struggling to get it leveled until I like gave up. Because I was also trying to get it to be like flushed with the wall. So I was like, I think I was looking at them like this or something, to where it looked level here, and then when you look at
Juliana, let me know if you're using this tool right here, right? Because this one right here will snap your objects to the wall. And if for some reason that's still having an issue, right, you can just go into your attributes panel and then make sure you'll select the toilet, right? And then in your attributes panel, under the coordinates, you'll just type in a very specific coordinate. Like if you wanted this one specifically there and that other one to be at the exact same height, like you wanted them level specifically at the exact same level, right? I would just manually type in coordinates at that point, right? Because then I know they're exactly at the same level. But keep in mind, when you're moving things around in your space in 3D, when you change your view, it's going to change the way it looks, right? So like if you're all of a sudden looking up from this direction up there, they're going to the perspective is going to make it look different. And so just by typing in those like coordinates or those parameters inside of the coordinates panel, you just know that they're exact that way. And then making sure that you're using that tool right there when you're bringing them in, so it snaps up against the wall, and that's how you know the geometry is there. And then if not, right, you can just click on that object up in your objects panel. I would suggest doing it from here, not just grabbing it inside your scene, and then just nudging it over with the hitting E to get your position move tool for when your object is selected, and then moving it that way. But you'll know if it's like kind of going through the wall, especially if you hit your render preview button and all of a sudden it's like looking really funny. You'll be able to tell, or it looks like it's halfway through the wall. You'll want to move it at that point, right? And I believe that was the rest of your question.
the wall. So I was like, I think I was looking at them like this or something, to where it looked level here, and then
yeah, that's the whole perspective thing. Remember, when you change that view, your perspective is changing from where you're looking at it. So it won't, even if it is level, right? You type those coordinates in manually and it's still level. You change that view and it's going to look like it's off. And it's just your angle that you're viewing it at.
An easy way to do that.
All right. So we have Bear.
Hello. Even though I don't currently have any issues or problems with this week's assignment, I'm almost certain that I probably will, or something will come up to where I'm like confused in a sense, and I will definitely reach out and message if I have any problems or concerns. But as of right now, I do not. Because as you said in the lives last week, or I think it was like a couple days ago, it is easier for me personally to just watch the live lectures and just follow along. And I think that's why I didn't have any problems with the assignment last week, just because I just followed along with the live lecture on the YouTube channel. Um, Also, I just wanted to say I do appreciate the due date being spaced out, just because just takes away the pressure of just trying to complete the assignment before the due date, and I feel like I have time to like make sure that the assignment is actually like done properly, timed well, and just executed like well. So I appreciate that and thank you.
Yeah, of course. First of all, I'm happy that you're enjoying like hanging out or watching through the live streams. If you're in there right now, Bear, say what's up, dude. But like, when you follow along with the live stream too, you note it. Like, I am not perfect. I don't get things right automatically the first time. Perfect, right? It takes me, sometimes I like to mess around with things and adjust things a little bit more because maybe my taste that day is a little bit different and I don't like the way it looked last week and I like more the way it looks this week, right? And so you're going to see, I don't go through, it's not perfect for me all the time. I don't want you guys to think that being in this career field means that you have to be perfect every single time you do something, because it's not. If you're putting that pressure on yourself, you're just gonna end up with gray hair by the time you're 30, right? That's a lot of that's a very high expectation to put on yourself, and so giving yourself a little bit of grace to have room to do something wrong, it's okay, and then learning from that, right? So then when you go to do it again, you're like, I'm going to avoid that whole situation that I got myself in, and I'm going to do it this way, or maybe changing the way you have to watch things or changing the way you have to take notes. I am the type of person that I have to take notes like all the time. I will sit there and type notes religiously. Like, it is, if I don't do that, right, then I can't go back and get the things that I missed, because sometimes I just tune out and it's not something that I intentionally do. It's just how my brain works. And so I've had all these years to fine tune the way I learn things and understand things. And so I'm happy to hear that like you're feeling more confident watching along with the videos and doing it that way. Sometimes what I used to have to do is I used to have to watch the lecture. And when I was in school, I didn't take any online classes. So I was in class. So I would sit there and watch and see what was happening, and I'd take notes, and then I'd go and do it from the notes. And then what's nice about these online classes and recording it, right, is that you can go back and rewatch. And our lovely assistant Belle, who I will mention every time, she is so awesome, and she timestamps those for you. So if you don't want to have to go through the video over again or try and figure it out, she's got those timestamps that usually she updates fairly quickly. And then right now, the pressure of, I will slowly build the pressure of the deadlines for you, right? Like this whole one that I have for the revision round, like that's a hard deadline. You guys have to get things done or get that one turned in on time, because of the reasons I told you in the beginning of class. I'm not going to go through it again, but at this moment, you guys are just learning about animation. You're just learning about the programs, and it is a lot to take in. And your brain will feel foggy, and it will feel tired and overworked. And I understand that. And so I don't want you guys to feel the added pressure of having to get something in on time. Because then you guys are going to be up super late, and I'd rather you, like you said, take your time with it, do it well the first time, as good as you can, turn it in, and you'll have some notes on it, and then you'll go back, and when you have to go back and retouch it, you'll feel a little more confident going to do it, right? So that's the reason I do that. And thank you for saying that. It was very nice words. Thank you, Bear. All right, Megan.
Just wanted to ask, what is the revision round all about? Like, I get you make revisions on some assignments if you get feedback on them, but what is the revision? What does the revision round have to do with? Oh.
I went over that with Lee's questions. So again, it has to do with just that's what you do in this field. You will have revision rounds on all of your work. So it's the way this class is set up is it's set up to not only teach you how to animate and how to learn these programs, but then also like to get into like the mindset of that you're gonna turn things in and you're going to have feedback on them and you're going to make those changes and then you're going to turn them in again and then you're going to have feedback on them and you're going to make those changes and you're going to turn it in again, right? So we're just making it better and better, improving upon it each time, right? All right, next question.
This is my question for this week. So scrolling through my canvas, I noticed that you moved the motion design towards next week Monday, which is good. I like that. But why are we doing the motion design thing twice? That seems like it's a rather obvious question, but why are we doing it twice? We already did it once, why are we doing it again? Seems like an obvious question, I know, but still, it's still a question. No one ever said I can't do this question.
Yes, no one ever said you can't ask that question. It's okay to ask that question, Nick. I said, I mentioned this in last week's class too, is the reason we're going over it twice is so that you guys understand how the motion works, right? We're focusing really on keyframes right now and on the curves of your, like, of the motion that's happening, right? The curves inside of your animation, your F curve graph. And you guys have to learn to just kind of, it's just to instill that instinctual knowledge of this is what I have to do to make it look a certain way. Because if you just throw keyframes on there and say it's good, it's not good. It's not going to work. You have to know how to adjust curves and how to adjust timing and how to line things up. And so that's why we do it in two different ways, is to teach you guys like, this is these principles of animation. We're focusing specifically on how to achieve those principles using keyframes and using curve adjustments. And that's why we have the two projects set up the way we do, is so that you guys get this in your head. I get it. Like, I understand it. It might feel repetitive and stuff, but it also teaches you how to do it in two different programs, right? Because After Effects is obviously has differences than in Cinema 4D. The way the keyframes are lined up, the way they look, just visually right off the bat, and having to work in a third dimension, like adding that additional dimension makes things even harder. So I understand your frustration with that. I understand that it seems like an obvious question and stuff, but that is the reason, is we're drilling down on those things for you guys. So with that being said, we're going to get into the final stage of our squash and stretch with the weight. Or I'm sorry, our final stage of the principles of motion design with weight, right? We're going to go ahead and recreate this here in Cinema 4D. I am going to show you guys how to do specifically right now, because we've got an hour and a half. I am going to show you guys how to do this ball first, and then we will go ahead and I will show you quickly how to do the ping pong ball. You guys will be creating the bounce of the heavy ball, right, by yourself. I want to see that you guys are understanding specifically what I'm telling you to do, and being able to animate this as if you were dropping a heavy ball onto the ground, right? And so you're going to have to pay attention to how it bounces, how it rolls, how long that happens, right? So that's a good test to make sure that you guys are paying attention to what's been going on in these last two assignments in the principles of motion design. So I am going to cut off my camera here, and we are going to, let me not save that. I'm going to re-download this so you guys can see what we're doing, so we can have like a blank template for it, and we'll get going here. See you until the end of class. All right. So I am just navigating to the modules page so I can download because I didn't do what I tell you guys to do, and I just saved it as my own without saving a copy, right? Okay, so I'm just going into download that template. I think it's this one. Remember, the second one says bounce, but that is not what it is. It's a weight. This up here. I'm gonna move this one into here. All right, and extracted that. Let's just double check. All right, cool. Here we go. So this is what you guys are going to see when you open it up. Let me show you guys what I should have done the first time. So let's see, I'm in here. Ah, it won't let me do it. Hold on, I have to close it out. That was a derpy move on my end. 1 second. All right, so here it is. So I am going to open it up, and then the first thing I'm going to do is go up here and File, Save As, right? Okay, File, Save Project As, and then I'm going to go back here. So I'm going to save it as Makara, my last name, or don't work for me. Underscore Principles of Motion Design 3D, and then I'm just gonna remove this here. I'm going to type in weight. Save that. All right, so this is probably, you're gonna see it in this view. This is what you're gonna see right away. Oh, maybe not this view. Great, I changed it. This view. You're in the, so there's new layouts up here. I believe it was Jessica. Jessica was mentioning this in her question. So you can toggle into the new layouts, but these are the older ones, I think. Those are the new ones. These are the older ones. Traditionally, you'll see me in the old layout section in the standard view. Okay. So, let me close that out. Let's just kind of get into the meat and potatoes here. The first thing that you notice is, if you look over in our objects panel, we have the bowling ball, we have a ping pong ball, and we have this other ball that is right here. that we are actually going to delete, and we are going to create a different one that we are going to cell shade, right? The other thing that you notice is that we are looking through the camera, and we definitely don't want to do that right now because we don't want to move anything. Although there is a protection tag on it, so you guys can't move it. But let's change our view here real quick for when we are going to add this second ball in, because I kind of want it lined up with all the other ones. All right, and so the first thing I'm going to do is up here, this subdivision surface with the squash and stretch, right, we're going to just delete that entirely. So make sure that you select this part right there, and then you're going to just hit delete, and it's going to get rid of that ball right there. And then we're going to come and we're going to hold this down, and we are going to create a sphere. And we're going to rename this sphere toon ball. And we're going to drop material onto this. So you're going to open up your material panel, and in there you see there is already a material called toon. That is the one that you're going to want to drag and drop onto there. And then we're going to just kind of move this into place, right? So I'm bringing it over, should be just about a similar distance there. All right, we need to move it over this way. Ooh, the reflection of that light, that studio is just a little crazy today for me. You guys can see like the studio light and stuff there. All right. And then we want to bring this up in the air because we're going to start it up in the air. All right, that seems to be, bring it up, bring it over. And then we're going to look in our camera to make sure we have it in view. Perfect. All right, I'm going to go back out of the camera, and I kind of want more of a straight on view at the moment. And let's go ahead, now that we have our balls put in here, you'll notice there's like some ridges and stuff around here, and that's just based on how many like divisions there are around the actual sphere itself. And so we're going to click onto the toon ball, and we want to change this object type standard. Okay, yeah. You'll grab the object up here, the toon ball that you just made, and under the object panel right there, or object tab, right, you're going to go under type, and you're going to select the hexahedron. And what that's going to do is it's just going to add some more divisions on there differently. Like if I were to delete this, and, or let's see, add that on, but let's say, let's see the lines, NB. Right, you can see it'll change the way that the geometry is around the ball, right? So if I start changing these, it's a hemisphere, it changes like the geometry that's actually around the ball. So we're not going to update, right? This just helps it look smooth there. And so I'm going to go back to our original view there. And then what you want to do in order to make it look smoother is then you crank up these segments here, and then all of a sudden you're smooth out. So I'm just going to even that out to 40, and I'm going to just quick save. So we've got that started. We changed the size and position as needed. We added the toon material to this. So let's go ahead and kind of focus on this backdrop real quick and get like a floor going here. So I am going to, actually let's, real quick before I forget, let's change that text. So under the type, you're going to select that, and you're going to type in weight, not bounce, weight. And then I like to just use Roboto because it is my go-to typeface. I'll select there, and I bold already. Perfect. Maybe even, is there a black option? The black is thicker. I usually like that, but this works fine. And then I'm going to look through my camera, make sure that, yeah, it actually looks pretty good there. Centered, like right now I'm looking for, right, because we're not going to be animating the camera. we're going to be animating the balls. The camera's going to stay still. So I'm just looking for about equal space between there and there, right? As far as on the text. So it looks centered. The only thing I do see is that it's kind of off the ground there. And I can tell is if I go into my different views and right here, I can see that it's, here's like the ground, right? And my type is a little bit too high. So I'm just going to drop that down. So it is touching the ground there. Perfect. That looks good. All right, now we're going to go back into this view. We're going to go out of our camera. And remember what I was mentioning about, in fact, let's go back into our camera real quick while we drop this texture on. But I was mentioning that let me turn this down a little bit. The texture, you're going to want to find something, a material that works well with the viewport renderer. Not all materials will work well, so let's just kind of go in here and type in, we'll do a wood floor. Wrong word. All right, let's go down here. I think for that other one I used walnut. We can try. That walnut wasn't bad. The parquet seemed to not work. Let's see if it works in this one with the studio setup. If I do a quick, whoa, okay, let me see here. It looks okay. It's not bad. Let's increase the sample size, right? Which is under, if you click on the material, if you click on the material tag up here, I believe, or is that the one? No, you have to click on the, material inside of the material panel. So click on this one right here. And under viewport, and then texture preview size. That's the one you want to look for. Instead of default, I'm just going to crank that up. There we go. We have a good preview size there. I'm going to save it. I'm going to do a quick, I don't know why it's doing that. Let me just delete this one and drop the other one on that I had. Whoa. I think I fully deleted the floor. Let me just delete this tag real quick. Delete this material. Delete unused materials. Use this walnut. We'll just use this one again because I know it works. Real quick. It has to do with the studio HDR. It's actually has to do with like the lighting. You guys might get that little you guys might get that on there as well. I feel like that didn't happen. That didn't happen with my other one. If that becomes an issue for you guys, let me know, but I don't think it will. And then we'll go again, click on that texture preview size. I'm going to amp it up, crank it up there. But this looks really tiny right now because the wood floor looks really big. So we want to adjust the tiling, remember, on that. So we're going to go to, you want to click on the tag itself now. That is on the actual object up here, right? This is the tag, this is the material. So you guys know, these over here are all the tags, and these just are your materials that you have saved in here. If you make a change to materials in here, and they are placed onto your objects over here, it will update them. So just keep that in mind, right? Like for that pepper, right? I had this similar material put on it, but different colors. I had to duplicate this material. I had to duplicate this material and turn it into a different color. So just make sure you guys do that if you want to play around with the color a little bit there. And so I'm going to now change the tiling. Let's try 15, 15. Yeah, that's good. Stop doing that. 10, 10 might. Yeah, that looks good. I like 10, 10 a little bit more. Save that. And let's close this out so we don't have to look at that. There's already a white material on the text right there. You guys can update that if you want, but remember, keep in mind color theory. If you want to color it, you'll go to the reflectance and under layer color, I believe we'll change it that way. That's not going to work. Remember, there's different ways to color things inside of Cinema 4D. That's not going to work. Let's go into the luminance. That one tints it. It's not really a change in color though. Undo that. This one's a really shiny object, so let me just try here. Was it here I already tried? Yeah. That was the reflectance. Remember, we spoke about that last week in class. It's about like the reflecting light through there. Oh, it's because I'm in the wrong material as well. Either way, I'll leave that for now. You guys can play around with the color of that, or you can add a different texture on if you want to. I'm okay with that. But let's go ahead and get to really creating and animating this toon ball here. So we created it, we did that, we changed the like geometry around it so it's a hexahedron and not whatever it was before, and we increase the segments. So let's check our settings for our project, right? So we are at 24 frames a second at 80 frames, which is kind of an odd number. 20, well, let's do 80 divided, not times, 80 divided by 24. Whoa, that was the wrong equation. All right, so we have a fraction. We have 3.3333 seconds, but we will we'll address that in a little bit here because we're gonna make a loop. I'm gonna show you guys something. What movie do you love? Did I quote a movie that I'm just unaware of? Eric, you have to let me know because I just read that comment. Or I said it earlier and I just already forgot what I said, which is a thing in my household. Let's go ahead and minimize this right now. We will actually we'll update the seconds on this, like I said, in a little bit, because we're going to be creating a loop. And the thing about loops, right, is you want the loops to be divisible, the time to be divisible by however many frames that you're working with. So, that 80 frames won't work, and we'll have to do, let's do the 90, what was it, 96? What is it, 92? 24 times 5? Oh, I did division again. 24 times 5? 120 frames. Let's put it there so that we're at 5 seconds, right? And then we know that our 24 frames goes into 120 5 times. So how you can, that means that everything has to land on a divisible number by 120. I don't know if that makes sense. I think I said that a little bit funny, but you guys will see here once we start like throwing some keyframes down. So the one thing that we want to add to this is a deformer. We're actually going to start with something a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you're selected on the toon ball. And over here are our deformers. This one happens to be a bend. We're not going to use that one. But if you hold down, there is one over here called squash and stretch. And you're just going to click, I'm just getting out of the camera view. You're going to go ahead and click and add that into your project. Now, the squash and stretch deformer, like if I select that and I start moving around, nothing's happening, right? Because it is, it needs to be attached to something right now. And right now it's just kind of free all over the place. So we want to make it essentially a child of the toon ball. This is something we're going to get more into a little bit later when we talk about rigging. But essentially, right, what we're doing is we're tying this squash and stretch parameter here to the ball so that wherever we move this ball, this squash and stretch will follow. It is now attached to the ball, and that's why we call it a child of the parent. This ball is the parent, and this squash and stretch parameter right here is the child. And so now, though, it has something to affect. So if I start changing things like the factor, what? It is starting to make changes to the actual object. Let me go back here. Oh, that's what I have to do. So you notice I couldn't figure out why it wasn't really doing anything. Its anchor point, the squash and stretch anchor point of that deformer, defaults to the center of your composition or to the center of the world, right? And so we want to, once we add that and parent it to the toon ball, we want to make sure that down here, if you don't click this down here, you're going to have issues, right? So you want to make sure that you click fit to parent. And what that's going to do is it is going to take the anchor point of that deformer, specifically the squash and stretch one, and it's going to match it up to the anchor point of the actual ball. So once I click that there, you're going to see it move. And then once I start changing the factor, you can see that it starts to add that squashing and stretching. Like, boom, boom. All right. So I'm going to put that to the natural 100 there. Any of my D&D players out there know what I'm talking about. Natural 20. I'm like the best at rolling them. Just kidding, I suck at it. But all right. So there's a lot of parameters within the squash and stretch here, but we're really only going to worry about a couple of them. We're going to be working with today the factor, and then you don't have to worry about the aspect of, but maybe the center here, and possibly the expand, but we'll see as we get a little bit further into there. I think it'll just be the factor in the center. I actually don't think that you're going to be working with... Here, let me stretch this out a little bit and see. Yeah, see how the center... and this is a great way to check and see what, like, different parameters, the factors that they have, right? Is you change one thing and you see how it changes, and then you move the other thing to see what change that one makes. And what this does is it's like changing where the thickness happens, right? So when we're going to start bouncing the ball, and it's going down, right? This skinny part, the most of the weight is going to be at the bottom of the ball. And so it's going to be skinnier. The center of it is going to be, the stretch is going to be more up here. Versus when we're moving back up, the center of that stretch is going to be more down towards the bottom of the ball, the bottom of the ball, because all of that mass is being shot upwards, right? We're going up back towards the sky with that momentum. So let's just change these values back to 0 and 100, and that just kind of gives you guys an idea of how these deformers work. So let's go ahead and first animate the position of the ball. I'm going to show my animation and expand that down there. One thing that you guys notice is the toon ball isn't actually down here within the timeline. So if I just start keyframing things, it's not going to, if I start keyframing it, it's not actually going to show up down here. We are going to have to drag this ball down into... Are you going to work, or do I have to put keyframes in first? Looks like I have to put keyframes in first. So let me go ahead and select the ball, and I'm going to click on coordinates. And remember, we're only going to be animating for this one the Y keyframes, the Y parameters. So I'm going to make sure I'm at the beginning of my timeline. I'm going to keyframe. And then I'm going to move the playhead let's move it 24 frames right now. Whole second. Right, we'll change that here in a minute. And, oh, there we go. It showed up automatically. That's nice. If it doesn't, just drag and drop it like I showed you there. And then let's bring that down, but let's make sure that we have it all the way down at the floor. This is a nice thing, right? You can use all of those same shortcuts that you do in these views as well when you're working in other views, right? So because I want to make sure that this ball hits the ground and doesn't go through the ground, I want it to just kind of hit the ground right there. And I'm going to, so I changed the value, so let's put this at 100 and keyframe. Let's go back to that view there. And we're going to move the playhead another 12 frames forward. And we are going to copy and paste, control click, remember, this keyframe here so that the ball bounces on the floor, stays on the floor, and then it's going to come back up. So we're going to move ahead another 24 keyframes, which is 36, 50, 60. And we are going to copy and paste this keyframe over here. Now, the biggest thing about a loop, and in this is in After Effects, this is in Cinema 4D, it does not matter. When you create a loop, a seamless loop, seamless is key, right? The first and last keyframes have to match. Absolutely. Cannot change in value. If the keyframes are different, you will get a hitch in the animation. Now here, let me see if I have some examples on my computer. Under photos, I think I have some GIFs. Yes, here's a great example of one that loops perfectly, right? You cannot tell when the beginning or end of this animation happens because they are exactly the same from the beginning to the end. Whoever animated this could have animated it only 1 second or like 3 to 5 seconds long. But if the first keyframe and the last keyframe match and are exactly the same of all of the values, all of the parameters, all of the changes that are made, right? Because here you notice there's like a rotation happening, and then the colors are changing as well. So both the rotation has to begin and end on the same spot, and same with the colors. The color has to begin at the same values and end at the same values in the exact same positions as well. But if not, what happens is you get a hitch in the animation. And what do I mean by that? You see that tiny little jump that happens right there? That is a hitch in the animation. That's where the nothing in this animation lines up perfectly at the beginning and the end. And so you get this little jump, right? And since we're creating a seamless loop, specifically with this one, we want them to be matching perfectly. It won't be the same when we start bouncing like the ping pong ball or when you go to do the bowling ball, right? Because those ones are going to, this one's going to continuously bounce. This one's going to bounce and come to a stop. This one's just going to keep going. But you guys should know about looping because it's really popular right now. It'll probably stay popular because it's great for Instagram shots. And it's just a valuable lesson to learn. So we're going to make sure that this ball is looping. So last keyframe and first keyframe, same. And then let's adjust the timing of this, right? So let's go into our, let's go over here into our curves. And right now, in fact, I don't think this is 24, 36, 46, 56, 60. It just looks weird to me right now. It just might be the angle of my monitor, but let's make this a bounce because obviously it is not one right now. So holding down shift, and I'm going to click and drag this up. The nice thing about this toon ball is that it's cartoony. So we can make a very exaggerated looking bounce happen. Let me drag them up to about the same area. I am looking specifically to meet them about the same line here, right? As far as the handle goes, because I want it to be about the same. Yeah, that looks good to me. And so if I play this back, boom, stay on the ground, bounces up. Boom, stay on the ground, bounces up. Awesome. That's not bad. Obviously the timing needs to work out, or we need to adjust the timing rate because it's too long. But we want it to continue bouncing. So I'm going to show you something. Please don't be mad at me. I saved it for this reason, right? I didn't want you guys, I wanted you guys to learn how to create bounces, right? And bounces that decrease in height and momentum as they continue going. But this one is not. It's going to continue bouncing. And well, we've got a ton of frames to still continue that bounce, right? So we could either copy and paste it, which is fine. It works. But then if we make any changes to this one here, then we have to go through and make changes to all the sequential bounces. And that's a lot of tedious and hard work. So we are going to add a repeater. And that is the joy of Cinema 4D, is it makes it really easy to loop things inside of Cinema 4D. As in versus like After Effects, it's much harder to do. So what you want to do is you're going to select the toon ball, and underneath in the attributes panel, right here, it says after, and then it says constant right there. We want to change this to repeat. So watch what happens when I click that. All of a sudden, you have, well, if I hit H, it's not going to center all of those other ones. But if I just scroll out of here, it's got all of the bounces happening infinitely. Like, it's just going on forever. Look how many frames I'm at right now. Like, if I let this ball bounce on forever, it would. It's obviously going past our, we only have 120 frames here, but it's obviously going past that. But this is a great way to create a loop animation and to continue a specific animation over and over and over again. So you only have to do a section of it. And notice how I did the half, right? Because if I were to do the loop a little bit differently, if the arch was happening like this, and then you'd have to have a little section there and a section there where the floor is, or where the ball is on the floor. Let me do this and zoom out a little bit. The nice thing about this is that any adjustments that you make to this entire, like the section that you're working on, it falls in line, right? It happens with all the subsequent curves if you adjust the original one. So I'm actually going to go into my dope sheet view. I'm going to select all of these, and I am going to bring this bounce down. I want it happening rather quickly. I want it to happen in 1 second. Let's see how that looks. It's a little fast. I didn't get that. Good. Siri's listening again. Let me take that off. Silence it. One moment. Un momento. All right. Silenced. Let me see what the timing is I have in this one, because I liked what that one was. Toon sphere. The position keyframe ended on 30. Oh, I had it happen in a little bit longer. So, I mean, I guess let's move it to 30 is, let's divide, so we have 120 total frames, right? We want this to be a seamless loop. So we want the, I was talking about having the first and last frame be the same. Well, if you're going to have multiple bounces, you don't want it to start up in the air and bounce, bounce, bounce throughout your animation and then end up on the ground, because then it's not a seamless loop, right? So remembering that that has to be the same at the end. And we can always adjust, you can always adjust your, the timing of the comp, but it's better just to do like the math right away. So if I divided it, I wanted like, let's say 3 bounces. So 120 divided by 3 would be on 40. Let's get 4 bounces in there then at 30. So I had it right the first time. So I'm going to just take these and bring them out to 30 there. And there we go. 3, 1, 2, 3. It's not showing all the bounces because I have the render preview down a little bit. So there we go. See how it's a perfect seamless loop of bounces. And even after here, right, because I have it, the render preview on exactly 120 frames. That's how long we're making it. And we get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 full bounces, right? Before, when I was counting, it had already completed an entire bounce. So I'm going to save this. And now let's add this squash and stretch. So I am going to select the squash and stretch deformer specifically. And I'm going to move the playhead to the beginning of the timeline. I have it there. And then I am going to keyframe the factor. Make sure you're in the object under the attributes panel. And I'm going to keyframe that factor change. And I'm going to zoom in here, because we're only going to work in this space, and then we're going to repeat, right? So let me hit H actually there, and then just zoom out slightly. All right. Notice that the factor, even though the toon ball is down here, the squash and stretch isn't. So I'm just going to take that and drag it into my timeline down here at the bottom on my dope sheet. And then notice all of a sudden you actually have the squash and stretch keyframe showing here. And so then I'm going to move the playhead forward. Let's move it 8 frames forward. And I'm going to select that squash and stretch, and let's adjust that factor value to, like, let's try 175. That's not bad. We can even crank it up a little bit more. 180. Let's try 200. There we go. 200 is a nice exaggerated look, right? And I'm going to lock in that value and keyframe it. And then I'm going to move the playhead to where the ball hits the floor, exactly to the same keyframe, to where the ball is on the floor. And I'm going to keyframe it back to its original size, right? Because notice all of a sudden it's going through the floor, and we don't want that. So I'm going to bring that back down to 100, hit enter, and I'm going to keyframe that value. And then I am going to move the playhead 1, 2, 3, 4, let's 2 frames ahead, right in the center of where the ball is on the floor, right? Because these are floor position keyframes. And I'm going to add in the squash. And so I'm going to select that squash and stretch. You have to do it up here in your object panel. And then I'm going to adjust that factor to, let's try 50. Yeah, that's not bad. 40. I like 50. Not as crazy. Especially because you guys are going to be animating that as well. So I'm going to select on this. And then I'll show you guys how to change the color here of your material, so it'll kind of get rid of that weird little line there. You can change things like the aspect, but then it changes the shapes, right? It changes like the aspect, I believe aspect ratio. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look more into. Can you right click and get info? Nice. You can right click and hit show help. And it will take you to, let's find out together. Awesome. That is, there you go. So if you right click on a parameter that you don't know, and you're questioning what a specific thing is, like just right click and quick question, and you could go, This slider is to adjust the strength of the effect along the X and Y axis only. If set to 100, the effect strength will spread equally in both directions. If the value reduces, the strength will decrease correspondingly according to the Z axis. Interesting. Very wordy, but we're not moving that, so who cares? So then I'm going to move the playhead. So we just did the squash happening, right? And we're going to move over to here because we want it all to be equal. And then we're going to change that back to 100, right? But I can just click this one and control drag. And then we're going to move, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out. So 5 frames. I want it to be equal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to copy and paste this. Then I'm going to go to the very end. And I'm going to copy, paste this. There we go. Copy, drag. So, much quicker. We have more of an exaggerated bounce. Looking good. The problem is that it only happens once. Well, we just learned how to change that, right? Is that you want to go to, select this, under the attributes panel, again, under after, change the constant right there. Not before, but after. Right? Because we don't want it to happen before our frames. We're starting all the way at the beginning of our timeline. So don't worry about this one. Just do this one. So after, repeat. Right? And then, if we play it, we have a perfect loop happening. It's got a nice little bounce happening up there. Perfect. Let me see this real quick. What is the factor value right here? Yeah, that looks good. And then it should be 100, 100. We can even, I'll show you guys how to offset them in a second. If I move this one into, I can move this one into, out to, right? If I move this one back to, move this one forward to, and we'll have a section where it stays flat up there. Ooh, but notice that if you do that, this is where the issue comes in. And you'll see why you can't do that, actually. Is because when you're changing the length of where it lines up, when you're changing where it lines up with the position keyframes, right? Where the squash and stretch should be lined up here, but we changed that. What happens is that this continues repeating and it gets out of sync from the position. So then all of a sudden, you're moving, you get a good bounce there, but then all of a sudden it stretches way too early, flattens out way too early, and then it starts stretching because it's all off by a total of 4 frames because I came in 2 here and then 2 forward there. So we actually have to keep it at the exact same length as the initial position changes. So, nice lesson for you guys to learn there. And let's go ahead and adjust these curves, right? Let's make them a little bit more, let's give them a little bit more of an exaggeration. So I'm going to select those and this one down at the bottom. I'm going to drag these out. This one right here is where it kind of goes back to its original shape and then squashes. This one right here is the squash keyframe. Let me do this. Squash keyframe. These two right here are the 100, 100 values. We have the stretching happening here, and then back to the original forms right here. So in case you guys are wondering how the keyframes look. And that looks pretty good. Let's see how that looks. It'll give it a little bit of a hang. Yeah, I like that. That's not bad. So I'm going to save that. And now let's add that center parameter in to the middle of this squash and stretch, right? We want to change where the center of the, what we were talking about, right? When it's going down like this, we want that center to be like up more at the top. And then when it is coming up here, we want that center to be more at the bottom, like where it's tapering in, right? Squeezing in. And so, let's move the playhead forward one frame after the squash and stretch keyframe. So right here. I believe that's where I had it. Let me just double check what I did before. The center. Yeah, because here is my squash and stretch. The factor. And then the center happens one keyframe after. Cool. You know, I like having this reference that I did because then I know what I did before. And so you can work through it a little bit quicker. So, moving, once you place your first deforming of the squash, we're going to move one keyframe ahead. And let's keyframe that parameter, the center parameter of the squash and stretch at 0. And then we're going to move the playhead forward to where the ball is completely squashed right there. And then let's change that center to 40 maybe. Right there. And let's keyframe that parameter. And then actually opposite. I don't know why I did that. My brain went crazy. Undo. Undo. Okay. This one right here should be the center keyframe. Click on this. Center. There we go. This one should be keyframed at, this one should be at 40. Let's change that one to 40. Enter, change it, right? Yeah, there we go. That looks more appropriate. And then we're going to move to where it's completely squashed, and we want to put that back to its original shape at 0. We're going to enter, record, right? And then we're going to move the playhead forward to one frame before this squash and stretch keyframe, right? Because we did this one after, we want to do this one before. It's mirroring it, right? And so that's when we are going to take that center. I keep clicking off of it. And we're going to put it back at 40. In fact, not regular 40, right? Because this, if you notice, this specific value goes in a positive direction, and it also goes in a negative direction, right? And so we want an opposite of what we did the first time, which would be negative 40, right? The first keyframe we put on there was 40. This one will be negative 40. Notice it brings that center down towards the bottom more. All right. So let's play that one. Good. And then it just kind of, it repeats, but it's out of sync all of a sudden. Like if I were to bring it there, it should be going back down towards the ground. So let me stop that. Right here, it's going back down towards the ground, but the center should be up here, right? Why? Why is that? It's because we need some keyframes at the beginning and end so that the loop is the same. We need to set keyframes so the loop is the same length of the entire animation. Remember how it got out of sync a second ago, and we don't want that. So let's move here to the beginning, and we'll select that again up here. And we are going to, let's type in 0. Start it at 0. It will end at 0. 0. record. Let's just double check that. Let's click the center. This one should be 0. This one should be 40. Back to 0 to negative 40. Back to 0. And we will have an appropriate repeating. We should have a repeating center. Why is it not doing that? Because we have to, I think we still have to change that one too. Yeah, so you actually have to go in here and change this one as well to repeat. So everything that you change or animate has to be changed in there as well. There we go. That looks correct. And if I pull out a little bit here, it's repeating. There we go. And that way, when it's going back towards the ground, that tapering is happening up at the top. Again, repeated. Yep. And then when it goes bounces back up, you have the taper happening down at the bottom. Awesome. Perfect. That is exactly what we want. Success. All right. There we go. So, let me think. You guys can add some anticipation to the bounce under the position parameter. Let me grab the toon ball here. Unfurl that and select the position. Okay. Come on now. You not show me that? And then hit H. There we go. Here we are. You can add some anticipation, right, by creating overshoot on the first keyframe. The thing is, right, is that we need the first and last keyframe to kind of match. So if you're going to add the overshoot, let's say I bring it up like this and I create a high overshoot. That's fine. But then all of a sudden, if you look over here, these no longer add up, or they're no longer smooth, like a smooth transition into each other. So the last keyframe to the first keyframe, which are technically overlapping here, right? It's not a smooth movement into each other. And so what you have to do is then you have to bring this one down a little bit to create kind of that smooth transition from the one keyframe into the other. And so then when you look at it like this, it should kind of be just a smooth movement from here to here. In fact, it's much harder to do than you think. You can also add in an additional keyframe if you would like. But this should be, it should sell it. Let me see if I play this. And then it kind of gives it this little pop-up, right? So you're seeing that it looks like a gelatinous glob of flubber, right? The only way I can describe this is, like, to me it looks like Flubber, if you've ever seen the movie with dear old departed Robin Williams, rest in peace, greatest actor, I think, in my opinion. He was amazing. But what you notice is that with the adding that anticipation, so it's almost like that momentum gives it a little extra pop right at the end, where it just shoots it up a little bit more, a little bit further than where it needs to go, and it gives it this real bouncy and fluid and like just kind of a goopy feel to it, which I really enjoy. And in fact, you can add anticipation to the other parameters as well, but you just have to make sure that you are, whatever you change here at the beginning, you have to match towards the end, right? And just remember, when you do it this way, also it changes the momentum. This is changing the momentum of the ball going up, right? So if I didn't want to do that, let's say I wanted to have it back to where it was before, which is just like this. You could add an additional keyframe by control double clicking there, control double clicking here, right? And then you can adjust these keyframes right here. So let's say I wanted to add just like a little pop up there. Then I have to come over here I'll zoom in. By the way, I'm navigating my timeline through here the same exact way I navigate in and out of here. Holding down either 1, 2, or 3, clicking, and then just dragging, right? So then I'm going to select this keyframe, and then I'm going to bring this part just down this way so it matches there. And just make sure that this is kind of a smooth, like a kind of moving into this curve right there, right? This is going to be quite a dramatic look. I'm not sure if it's going to work perfectly, but you just want to make sure that there's no sharp changes of direction happening on that part of the curve or from this keyframe to this part of the curve. So let's center that, move it over here, and let's see what this looks like. It almost looks like there's like no difference at all actually from this to that. Oh man, I keep forgetting that that when you hit normally to like to undo, right, you hit Control Z, but to redo it, you would hit Shift Control Z inside of like After Effects or something. And so like if you were to, I don't know, let's say you wanted to remove those keyframes and then you didn't like it, so you wanted to go back to check it out again, you would just hit Shift Control Z, but it doesn't work inside of Cinema 4D. But either way, you guys kind of understand what I'm saying there. So if you want to add a little bit of overshoot to your animation, so I'm going to do it back like I had it before. Let's see if I can. No. Oh no. Don't start messing things up. I'm getting too crazy with my. Let me just check here. Center. That keyframe should be at 0, 0, -40, 0, 0. Okay. No changes there. Let's go into our dope sheet view, select this again, hit H to bring it up here, and let's just grab that. Let's do a little bit of that overshoot. Grab this one, bring that in, drop it down. Notice that I'm also shortening the handles here, which will make it happen, like the curve will happen more drastic versus if I were to drag this up, it kind of makes it, it brings that curve out really far. You can do that, but then remember you have to match it here. So let me see if that works. There we go. We're looking through the camera now too, I realize that. So if I were to click out, pop up, neat. I will just leave it at that for now because it's 8 o'clock and I want to, let's make sure, I want to, let me, like, I want to remind you guys, give you like a mid-lesson reminder, right? And I can't say this enough because you're gonna do something incorrect where they're not gonna match up and you're gonna have a hitch in your animation loop. So remember, when creating a loop, the timing of the end values have to match the beginning keyframes, right? Last one, first one, same exact values, no different. Oops, I have like the hiccup. It makes me want to suck in air. Sorry. So if the beginning and end keyframes do not match in values on any of your changes, right, on any of the keyframes, that includes like the center, the factor, the position, the 3 things we keyframe. If they do not match on the beginning keyframe and the end keyframe, you will not have a seamless loop. Or if the keyframes do not add up at the specific length, or here's a great example. 30 can be divided into 3 times by 10. So if I wanted that weird center thing to happen 3 times throughout my animation, I could take this endpoint here and drag it in to happen within 10 keyframes, and it should stay within sync of the entire animation. In fact, if we go to here, and then we also select the ball, and then we hit H, right? They should be The end that is happening there should be the same that's there. Let me play this, see if it works. It does. It's just happening within a shorter amount of time. So like if I am right here, how many keyframes is this? 3 keyframes in. So 1, 2, 3. Ooh, it didn't work. So you can't even do that. Normally you can, like in After Effects you can do that. You can break things up differently. But it depends on how many keyframe, like how long the actual composition is. There's like a worksheet that I have that talks about looping animations, which I'm gonna actually give you guys as a reference because it's gonna explain it in a different way where you can see it, visually see what I'm talking about. So just make sure that all of your keyframes are the same length, right? As far as the beginning and the end keyframes, all have to line up together. This stuff in the middle can be a little bit different, right? Remember, like the center happens like off from where the squash and stretch happens. But you have to just make sure that these are the same, because then that means that each section is the same length and will stay within sync of each other. And then to make sure that there's at least 3 bounces within the entire animation. So you want it long enough that you can have 3 bounces in there. This looks cool. Now I'm happy with the animation. But let's update the color because the color is boring. So I'm going to double click into here, into the material, and we're going to learn a little bit about why it looks like this, right? Like the cell shaded look where there's like kind of a black outline and then the fill. Inside the luminance channel, under the texture, there's this is called a Fresnel shader, right? This is exactly why it looks like that. And if I were to change the view, like changing the angle does not matter. Whatever angle you're at, right? This ball has like an outline happening. It changes like thickness based on here because of how we're looking at the ball, like from the top view, the perspective of it. Exactly that question that we had in the beginning is the same reason why this looks thicker at some angles than it does at others. But in general, it is still always an outline, right? And so let's get back to here. I hope no one has vertigo because I probably could have sent you into a spiral there. I'm going to save my work. I've been saving my work throughout this whole process, but just want to let you guys know, remind you to save. So in order to change this, you have to double click into that texture and notice that there is like a gradient option here. And the gradients work just like they do in any other art program, right? So you can grab these little ones are they locked into each other? They are not. You can grab and drag these around. You can, if I take this and double click it, I can change the color here. Let's get like a green. I mentioned flubber earlier. I'm into it. So let's do the center color, kind of like this saturated, really bright green. Ooh, that is bright. Let me a little less saturated there. And then just slightly darker so it doesn't just make me cross my eyes. There we go. That's a little bit better. And then I'm going to add another one here. I'm just going to click off. I'm going to drag it to the end, and I'm going to make this one darker. Definitely a darker shade of green. I'll increase the saturation there. Let me just add a little bit of a blue tint to it. Right there slightly. Let's bring this in. You can see it's changing right there. This is the color that I'm putting in. I'm going to hit that, and it's okay, but it's like flopped around for me, right? Because I want the inside to be the brighter green and this darker color to be closer to the black. So I'm going to do this, swing that around. And then as I um, as I adjust the points on the gradient bar to change the look of the line around the outside of the bar, right? Like, so if I start moving this in closer to this, it gives it like more of a solid, like sharper edge there, versus if I take this and bring it back, it kind of creates like a nice fade, like a feathering kind of look into the other one. Also, it depends on this too, right? You can move these around to make it thicker or thinner. I'm going to have a little bit thicker. In fact, I'm going to take this and just make this a really deep green. It already is, isn't it? There we go. Really, really deep green. Close to black, but not quite. There we go. And voila, you have options to add like different gradients and color schemes kind of into here, right? And as I move that closer, it'll change the way, right? Harder lines, softer lines. I'm going to kind of center that there. Center that there. I'm going to save it. Close out of this. And that is a great way to change the color of your ball. And then if I play it, it has the animation with it as well. Now, the nice thing about this, right, is that we only keyframed the Y value as far as the position goes. So if you wanted to, let's say the ball wasn't in the spot that you wanted it at, like when you hit your camera, right? You can't change the height of wherever it's at, but you can change, make sure you're selected on the ball and not the squash and stretch. And then you can change the position of it on either the X or the Z, and then you can still keep your animation without affecting it, right? So I can put it behind the word wait. I'm going to move it back to where it was because I'm going to show you guys something else that you can do, like an alternate version that we did last year. So the nice thing about this, right, is that everything's contained under this deformer of the squash and stretch. So if I were to come in here and get an object, let's type in food. I know in the example we use a pepper. Let's try and, ooh, it won't let me use it. Let's just stick with the pepper for right now because I know it works. So I'm going to double click on that. And the pepper's in the scene, but it's itty bitty tiny in there. So let's make it bigger. So one way you can make it bigger is hitting T and then shift, holding down shift and clicking on the outside. Notice how it makes all of the different coordinate like tabs, right? It makes them all turn white, which means it's evenly scaling the object. Oop, we did not want to do that. I selected the wrong thing. Grab that pepper again. Shift and drag. There we go. Probably about right there. Let's change the, I'm looking through the camera right now, so let's change where it's located. Hit E. Bring it over here. Bring it up. Still slightly big compared to the, if I bring it here, I could probably make it, let's make it a little bit smaller. Shift, drag it down. And then E, move it around. Right there. Right, so we can just kind of see. And so if we take the pepper and make it a child of the toon ball copy, right? Where actually let's take this and make a copy of it. So can grab the entire toon ball section. I'll minimize it so you can see. Copy, paste, and let's just rename this toon pepper, right? But it will have the same, it'll have the same parameters as the other ball. And we select this toon ball pepper because it's still, because we just copied and pasted it, so it's still directly overlaid on this ball. And we want to move it over to where the pepper is, like kind of the center of the pepper. Don't move the Y value, remember just the X and the Z. And then we want to, let's move that pepper up slightly. So it's about centered there. That's good. Let me change my view here. Zoom out a little bit. rotate around, put the pepper in about centered. Yeah, that looks great. We'll look back through our camera here. And then you take this pepper object that you have right here and you make it a child of the toon pepper. And what you want to do next is we have the ball is still in view, right? And we don't want that. So remember how I showed you guys you could hide things in your you could hide things by clicking them here when they turn red and it won't show up, but it doesn't delete it, right? We're going to do that with the toon pepper ball, right? The ball object. But then we're going to click on these balls next to the pepper and make sure they're green so that we're only seeing the pepper and not the actual ball. So you'll see what happens when I click here, it's all gone. But then as soon as I click here, the pepper's back. And now, once I play this back, the pepper has the same attributes, the exact same attributes as the ball, right? And then if you want it to be different in timing, you would just adjust the right, because nothing when your animations happen all at the same time for different objects, like for example the ball and the pepper are bouncing at the same time, it doesn't give visual interest, so you want to offset it a little bit. And so what I would do maybe is I would probably take the toon pepper. Let's pause it real quick. Ooh, pause there. I'm going to take the toon pepper and drop it down here. And then I'm going to take all of the keyframes of that toon pepper and I'm going to offset them by 15 frames. Let's see if this works. The one thing to note though is that if you do that, I don't know if it will. There we go. Yeah, it sure does work that way. Nice, right? And then you guys can also duplicate this. You can just up here, right? If you wanted that pepper to be cartoony looking, because right now it's technically green, but it looks black in my view. But if you were to grab notice all these textures are up here, right? And we don't want those on that pepper. So if I were to take this and drop it down to the pepper on the stem, let me see here. Sometimes you got to drop it down more. Yep, see, you got to bring it down here. If I were to drop it there, it's all of a sudden there. But we don't want that same texture. Let's make it like an orange pepper, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to Control C, Control V to copy it. I'm going to rename this one to toon pepper. And then I am going to change these to orange. Let me bring them down to there. Okay, that's good. Change this one down to here. Okay, that's good. And then this one right here, double click, bring that down to there. That's red. There's orange. There we go. You know, not my favorite shade of them, but like still works, right? Then I'm going to just drag that and drop it onto the stem. Bring it down here because that's where it needs to be. Control C, Control V onto the base. Whoop, wrong. Dragging that, drag and drop. Remember, drag and drop. I did not do that, but I should have. There we go. And now we have an orange pepper. Cartoony looking, right? Nice. And then if for some reason your sizing is off of the pepper and it looks like it's stretching really oddly and it's kind of like clamping up at the top or the bottom, you can just go into under your toon pepper up here, your squash and stretch, and if you just adjust the top and the bottom, it'll just kind of how that capping, like that pinching kind of looks up at the top. So we're going to save this. And again, you can do that one for extra credit, but I mean, for 2 more steps, extra credit is not a bad idea. And then we're going to create, let's create the light ball bounce. And I know we only have a few minutes, but we can do it within that time, especially now that we know we have a repeater. So I'm just going to kind of close this texture out right there. And then what I want you guys to do, remember, you're going to do the bowling ball weight on your own. I want you to add textures to both the, I want you to add a different texture to the ping pong ball, or the ping pong ball can stay the same texture as long as you change either the text or the bowling ball. The bowling ball has to be a different texture, right? So you guys are going to have to, you can go into your materials panel up in the asset browser and look there, or you can try and work with your own material. We talked about physical based rendering, the PBR materials, and we talked about standard materials a little bit, so you can add those to it. But just make sure they're a little bit different each time. And then, so let's click on this ping pong ball, and we want to animate the position, right? So we're going to go into coordinates. Let's change the view here to our side view, right there. And we'll make sure we're at the beginning of the timeline, and we're going to hit keyframe on that Y value. We're going to move the playhead, let's say to the, where the ball is on the ground. Let's move it to here. What ours is in 30, so it's this one right here, 13. And then I'm going to just move this. I'm going to move it to 12, actually. Half a second. 12 frames. Then I'm going to move this down, tiny, tiny, tiny. Again, this is the ball. Don't make sure, if you bring the anchor point down, the ball will go through the floor, and you don't want that, right? So keyframe that value. Let's go into the F curve so I don't have to see that anymore. Then we're going to move over 12 more frames, so for 24, and then we're going to copy this, control drag, right? Holding down shift, control drag that there. And now you can continue to copy and paste the bounce until, right, because it is going to, it's, this ball, right, this ping pong ball is going to lose momentum as it's bouncing, but because it's light, it will take a long time to do so. And so we're going to have quite a few bounces that are going to happen with the ping pong ball that are going to sell that this object is very light, right? So then I'm going to move another 12 frames forward, which is 30, wait, we're at 24, 36. And then I'm going to drag and paste this, shift drag this one, right? And then we can just kind of, we're gonna drop these down as we go, right? So we're going to bring this over a little bit more. And then it should be 36, so we'll go to 48. And then we're going to, I'm just going to select these right here. Control drag, holding down shift. And then I'm going to move to here. Let's go to, well, we're at 60, so 72. And then I'm going to select these two. Yep. And I'm going to control drag shift. And then I'm going to move from 84 to 96. And I'm going to control, what did I do? 72, control shift drag, right there, right? And then select these two again, go to 96, move my playhead there, control shift drag, control drag, dang it, come on now. Oh, I'm trying to move too fast, sorry guys. There we go. That'll work like that. And then we will just continue it. Select these. Move ahead to, what was that, 96, so 108. And then control drag shift. And then we're going to, then it'll end right there, right? We're going to do it one more time. No, we don't have to do it one more time. We'll just continue doing this. And then what you're going to do is, let's hit H so they all show up. I'm going to select all of these ones and just bring them down a little bit at a time. There. And you can do it based on the graph too, right? So like but just make sure that you're grabbing just the tops, bringing them down a little bit at a time. Bringing these ones down a little bit at a time. Bringing these ones down. So they're subsequently getting smaller and smaller each time. The bounce is getting shorter and shorter, right? And then we can grab all of these top ones here if I can. And then we are going to drag these out so that they're nice and exaggerated. We have a little bit of a hold. Let's do the same with the bottom ones. All right. And then, whoop, actually that's wrong, right? Because they need to be bounces. And so we're going to shift click like this. But notice if you have them all selected, it does the same. Like this. Beautiful. So now we have a bouncing ping pong ball. And if, let's view it in this view here. Bouncing, bouncing, continue, bouncing. If you guys want to move this ball forward, right, all you need are 2 keyframes. So we'll move the playhead to the beginning, and we will select the ping pong ball, and we will keyframe the X position. And then we'll go all the way to the end. And then we will just move this forward, right? Like it's going to bounce off frame. And then I'm going to keyframe that position again. And then we're going to go into the F curve of that. In fact, I don't even think we need to do that. Let's just watch this going, right? Then we got this bouncing ping pong ball that goes off screen. And so there, you see now that there are ways to make this much quicker and to do this much more efficiently, right? And so, of course, these ones are going to take a lot longer because the ping pong ball is a lot lighter. But then remember, when you go to do the heavy ball, it's not going to be, the bounces are not going to be this many, and they're not going to be this high. It's probably going to stop probably halfway, right? And then each one's going to be significantly shorter than the last. Remember what you did with the first principles of motion in After Effects, right? And so to recap this, right, I want to see the light bounce of the ping pong ball. I want to see you guys do the heavy bounce and even add a roll in if you think you can to the heavy bowling ball. Change the texture on that. Go ahead and do the toon ball. You don't have to do the pepper, but you can if you want, or try something else if you want to. Make sure you're changing the materials in an appropriate way, and then render this out. I want it to be 120 seconds for this one. Or 3 bounce at least. In fact, no, just 120 seconds is good for this one. Because you want to show the difference between the ping pong ball, the bowling ball, and this one. So 120 frames, or 120 frames total, not 120 seconds. Let me change this, frames. And then you guys also have to have the dice added in there, as well as the impact scene. And I want them all, let's save that too. So let's do this real quick here. One total, the deliverable, I think. So one total deliverable, MP4. My brain. Format. The dice, squash and stretch. The impact scene. and then the weight, right? And all of them, I want you guys to put them all into one MP4, right? And then if you guys watch on the, if you guys are watching on, or looking at Canvas, let me go back here. Oh, come on now. Let me bring this over here. I believe it says right here. All right, different ways to compress your files, right? If you watch this one, this is about compositing all of the scenes together, but this one only contained 2 scenes, so just remember that, because I want all of the scenes in there. But this is just a reference, right? Like it says, it's not a step-by-step tutorial, it's a reference on compositing them. And then an MP4 of your principle of motion designs in 3D, make it a tiny MP4 version and post it on Slack. In these, Casey talks about how to export a small MP4. Don't make it a GIF. GIFs, the problem with them is they have a small bit rate, so you lose a lot of your colors, you lose a lot of like definition, right, in a GIF or a GIF. So make sure you watch this video right here. And then also this video right here is also gonna, where Belle talks a little bit more about working with Media Encoder and compressing things as well. So make sure you guys watch that. Go ahead and post it onto Slack. Make sure you turn it into me, but then also comment on 5 other student posts, right? Make sure you're reading the deliverables. There's a reason they change every week. Other than that, I hope you guys have an awesome night. I will see you guys in class on Tuesday. And if you have any questions from now until then, just let me know. You know, we're coming up on that deadline. Next Friday is when I say I want all of your projects turned in, right? Next Friday is the 3rd of March. So make sure you're caught up on all of your projects by then. If you have any concerns or issues, contact me and we can talk about it, right? Other than that, I hope you guys have a good night. Have a great weekend. And we'll jam out on Tuesday. All right. I feel so old now.